So, progressives are upset at one of the most progressive games I know. Why am I not surprised? Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun. Persona 4 is a brilliantly written game that speaks deeply to many fans, and garnered praise upon its release for sympathetically developing two supposedly LGBT characters into its core narrative. Thus, I was blindsided when stumbling upon a number of articles panning Atlus's ability to handle queer characters. More specifically, I found an article from AnimeFeminist.com titled "My Fave is Problematic," which expresses frustrations with the same two characters I mentioned. The more I think about it, the more I realize how SJWs, in their desperate plea to be validated in media, are willing to find representation where there is none. They're too quick to call a character gay or trans without actually caring about the character's feelings or decisions. Basically, they want to hold these characters on a high pedestal as an example of their representation, but feel betrayed when they find out the narrative doesn't match theirs directly. Now, one would think the LGBT community would be welcoming and inviting to complicated issues of gender and identity, but ironically, they're coming off as highly exclusive. While I'm a straight, white male, and certainly not trans, I feel interacting with transgender people has taught me to stop thinking of people in terms of strictly defined categories, and to just accept people for who they are and how they want to be treated. So, how is this happening? First, I'll need to catch you up on the premise of the game. Persona 4 is, essentially, a story about a group of high schoolers confronting sides of themselves they repress from insecurity. At first, these insecurities take the form of dungeons, with symbolic boss fights at the end of each. The characters at first deny these aspects of themselves, only to eventually learn to accept them. You, the main character, have the chance to stick with these classmates as they further come to terms with themselves. For instance, Chie Satonaka is a tomboy and a martial arts fanatic who wants to protect people, specifically her best friend Yukiko. When she finds her shadow, she is forced to confront the idea that, deep down, she actually likes feeling stronger and superior to Yukiko. She likes being relied upon. Naturally, Chie feels like this implies she's thriving off of her friend's dependency, and adamantly rejects the shadow. After fighting it, however, she accepts this side of herself, acknowledging that wanting to protect her best friend doesn't mean she wants to hold Yukiko back. Rather, it means she just has an inherent desire to protect people in general. And in the time following her shadow battle, you help her learn to channel that desire into a dream of becoming a police officer. Despite the complicated mythology of the game, the way the characters are handled is surprisingly straightforward and relatable. Enter the more conflicted characters, Kanji Tatsumi and Naoto Shirogane. I think Atlus's localization team did a disservice to his voice actor Troy Baker in flat out telling him that Kanji is gay. Such a statement grossly simplifies the truth of the matter and misleads the game's players. Basically, Kanji is a tough-headed ruffian who expresses himself through violence and a taste for hard rock and heavy metal. He's tough and intimidating, at least on the outside. People at school fear him because he takes on the town's biker gangs at night. But we later learn that the only reason Kanji does this is because the rowdy bikers are disturbing his mother. In reality, Kanji is a very kind person who happens to like traditionally feminine things. His family runs a textile shop, and so he's used to working with fabrics and enjoys making cute plushies and accessories. He's insecure about this, however, and fears how people will treat him if they find out. His biggest fear seems to be being labeled as gay, and this causes trouble when he starts to suspect he might be gay. You see, he meets Naoto at school and is attracted to what he perceives as his male classmate. It's not so much that he fears gayness itself, but the stereotypical image he has of gay people, how he thinks society views homosexuals. Thus, his dungeon is a steamy bathhouse, and his shadow is a hyper-flamboyant gay stereotype, complete with a lisp and feminine sass. As with all of the other shadows, he too denies himself, and we're forced to fight a boss battle. Afterward, Kanji admits that his shadow is also a part of himself, and earns the power of a persona user. Frustratingly, people often take this as an admission that Kanji is gay, mistakenly thinking that this flamboyant exaggeration represents his true feelings and identity. As it turns out, Kanji discovers Naoto is actually a girl, and still continues having feelings for her. And no matter if he sees himself as gay or not, he is still the same rock-fisting, cuddly critter-crocheting goofball he's always been. Through his social link, Kanji learns that, if he is gay, it doesn't change him, his behavior, or his values. Kanji is Kanji, period. He accepts that he can crochet, and even want to look pretty in drag, while not making himself any less of a man. So, is he gay? Even after learning of Naoto's biological sex, he still gets excited about seeing her in a swimsuit, pulling the same bloody-nosed antics as his heterosexual friends. Does that make him bisexual? At a certain point, we just have to realize it doesn't really matter that much. He has a crush on Naoto as a person, and clearly this attraction persists regardless of her gender. So no, you can't parade Kanji on a stick as a gay icon in media. But that doesn't make him any less progressive. Let's move on to Naoto, who is apparently more controversial. Naoto is a biological woman who grew up on detective novels, such as Sherlock Holmes. She dreamed of becoming a detective just like him, and proves herself as a prodigy of sorts. By the time we meet her, she's in a joint investigation with the Inaba Police Department. Her struggle is simple yet significant. What does it mean for her to be a female detective? She expresses insecurity about her gender, and decides to present as male to better fit her image of an ideal detective, going so far as to wear men's clothes, bind her apparently large breasts, and even speak in a lower register. Whether or not she's actually experienced sexism in her line of work is unclear. But regardless, she seems to express a form of gender dysphoria. However, this isn't the dysphoria people typically think of regarding transgender people. Rather, hers is tied to the mistaken notion that a woman cannot be a great detective people take seriously. Her dungeon is a sci-fi laboratory, and her shadow is a mad scientist hoping to perform a sex change surgery on herself. After defeating the shadow, Naoto accepts this part of herself, but admits that while she can get older and more mature, she can't change being a woman. It appears that trans males felt betrayed by this, but I don't think Naoto is in any way shunning the idea of changing one's gender identity. Rather, her gender dysphoria isn't focused on identifying as a man for the sake of being male. Rather, to her, it's simply a means to an end in her career. When she truly questions her feelings, she realizes she does identify as a woman after all. It's a psychological nuance that I think we should be respectful of. The rest of her social link, especially when you choose to romance her, follows her struggle to unite her identity as a woman with her image of a detective. She realizes that nothing about being a detective is meaningfully gendered, and that even dressing in a more masculine way doesn't necessarily make her any less of a woman. To confirm this for herself, she begins exploring feminine traits she had adamantly rejected prior, such as speaking in her natural voice and trying on her girl's uniform. Hell, her female school uniform is the ultimate reward of her social link, and she trusts you enough to try and overcome her insecurities. As we see later in Persona 4 Arena, she is able to both embrace masculine and feminine traits, as she pleases, while still advancing in her male-dominated career. Just like Kanji, rather than stuffing her into the category of trans male, she is allowed to be herself, to establish her identity on her own terms. Naoto is Naoto. So what if she doesn't match the specific dysphoria other trans men share? Acting like this is a betrayal of LGBT values is self-destructive. After all, gender identity isn't that strict. A biological male can identify as a female without having to look like a woman, or without having to embody any societally feminine traits. The most hulky machismo male in the world can identify as a female, and that's perfectly valid. Meanwhile, you can have a different biological male who, despite looking just like a woman and fitting feminine traits to a T, still identifies as male. From a feminist perspective, this also applies. Someone either born female or identifies as such shouldn't be burdened by societal expectations of femininity. Liking cute shit doesn't inherently make Kanji a woman or homosexual, and wanting to be just like Sherlock Holmes doesn't inherently make Naoto a man. That's up to them to decide. And rather than caring about the feelings of these characters, SJWs seem more interested in seeking validation from these characters. Ironically, Kanji and Naoto represent a progressive mentality that fully supports LGBT, and yet they're being labeled as problematic. Am I totally off base here? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this channel, help me beat the algorithm by liking, commenting, and sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and most of all, smashing that notification bell as if it were your waifu. That way you'll never miss out on all of my anime content, lore videos, live streams, and Holy Waifu Wars polls. My vids are struggling to get featured, so that bell is absolutely critical. If you want to support me directly, check out my Patreon, or consider donating via Super Chat. And as always, celebrate your fandom.